There are 7 Pacific Angry Birds who perfectly embody the 7 deadly sins. However, if you flip these upside down, you'll find there's another set of 7 Angry Birds that represent the exact opposite of the 7 heavenly virtues. We'll be comparing Angry Birds who represent the 7 deadly sins and corresponding heavenly virtues: greed, lust, envy, pride, gluttony, wrath, sloth, chastity, temperance, charity, diligence, patience, kindness, humility. Starting with wrath, extreme anger, which perfectly matches Red. Red's short temper is legendary, and his tendency to lash out at the slightest inconvenience makes him a perfect embodiment of wrath. For example, when another bird accidentally knocks over his carefully built structure, he doesn't have any time for reasoning. He immediately explodes in anger, refusing to listen to the bird's explanation or his apologies. His anger often blinds him to reason, causing him to act impulsively and very violently, such as when he rushes into battle without a plan, driving solely from desperate vengeance. This destructive behavior creates a barrier between him and others, which making him an outcast, which we can see very well in the Angry Birds movie. But Red's wrath leads to a cycle of vengeance and retribution, where his inability to forgive or let go of any grievances only fuels his further anger, which is a continuous cycle of fury, not only isolating him from others, but traps him in a state of conflict all the time. And it just shows how wrath can lead to a life filled with regret and unsolved pain. This can easily be escaped from just not being naive and broadening your ways and actually being reasonable. Right here we have a perfect contrast to the 7 deadly sins, wrath, where I'm going to select red to represent charity, which is love, which is the opposite of wrath basically. So the reason why I picked red as being charity and love is because obviously he's the leader of the birds and he's the most recognized Angry Birds in the whole franchise, being the face of Angry Birds. But he symbolizes charity as his unwaveringly dedication to protecting the eggs and for his fellow birds to all get their eggs back in also the movie and seen throughout the games. And not only is charity in this context is about selfless love, care and devotion to the well-being of others, Red's actions can be seen and have a deep sense of responsibility for his love for his community in the games, the tunes, and also the movie. Seen throughout the whole franchise, I'm not going to say the games, the movie, the tunes, but seen throughout the whole franchise, we can see Red is always the first person to start a rally against the pigs once they always, and they always get their hands on the eggs. And once they always get their hands on the eggs, Red is the first one to go, the first one to be flung, the first one to set them up. It's the first one to organize a method to get their eggs back. And that's why Red perfectly represents the virtue of charity and love in this franchise. Gluttony, habitual greed or excess in eating. None fits this description more than King Pig. King Pig's obsession with food and indulgence paints a clear picture of gluttony. His excess consumption goes beyond just mere hunger, reflecting on deeper desire just to fill a void of material pleasure inside of himself, which he lost somehow, which was never explained to us. But for example, during a feast, King Pig gorges on way more than anybody would ever need. His size anyways, he's a pig. He has a thought that others might go hungry as a result of him overindulging, especially in his kingdom, which looks pretty medieval, and if you know anything about those times, they were not good times to be alive. Not only does overconsumption lead to sluggishness and just health problems overall, but also strains the resources around him, leading to imbalance within the kingdom. And this can be seen as well in the real life example as Nico Avocado in the real life, a YouTube sensation, but turned very, very bad. I'm not going to talk too much about him, but if you know, you know. I'm not comparing him to a pig, okay? Diving deeper into the Angry Birds lore, let's say, King Pig's gluttony is a metaphor for how overconsumption can lead to personal and communal harm, as his unchecked desires create a ripple effect of just negativity for everybody around him, and his inability to incorporate moderation ultimately results in the failure of him as a leader, and figuratively and literally shows the path of gluttony. This is the quality of moderation or self-restraint. And the birds that I've chosen to represent temperaments is the Blues, Jay, Jack and Jim, the 3 birds. And the reason I chose them is because they distribute their power in a controlled manner. When you press the screen or click or whatever device you're playing on, there's like 4 different thousand devices. They split equally into thirds and their power is equally distributed. There may be some discussion about this, but that they don't really have self-control, which temperance also really means, and the sweets. But a lot of these Angry Birds, they all have, there's a limited selection. They all have their faults and stuff. So the closest one that in my opinion, was temperance is the blues. And I felt that the ability to split into 3 different birds from one bird in the games just perfectly represented temperaments, the self-control ability to equally break yourself into 3 equal parts and not having one part stronger than the other, which went quite well. For my example, quite similar to Matilda, when you're attacking some pigs that are shielded behind stone, wood, glass, or any other materials in any of the games, or even the gravitational pulls of space, instead of sending a single bird that is really powerful, you can send 3, and they split mid-fight and all equal and hit different parts of the structure, weakening it all in a controlled manner, which temperaments is being self-controlled. And it just makes it very, very sensible to give this virtue to the blues for having this. Lust is having a strong desire towards someone. Who better than Bomb supports this role perfectly? I do know some other roles that also fit this, like Terrence or Matilda in the franchise, but Bomb fits this role perfectly because Bong's explosive nature is a metaphor for lust, characterized by uncontrollable desires and impulsive actions, which is shown during the movies and can be seen throughout the games and also the series. His intense need for instant gratification leads him to make reckless decisions without considering the consequences for those actions. There's a lot of times where Bomb has impulsively charged into a situation driven by the fleeting passion without the consequences or the repercussions of that, without any thought of the potential fallout of these situations mentioned before. They're all fueled by his passion for it and his desire to do it. Not only hurts him, but hurts people around him, which is sad to see. And these unchecked desires can spiral out of control, leading him to a life filled with regret, untamed harm, making lust a particularly dangerous vice to this chastity. Nothing better embodies this virtue more than Matilda. She embodies the virtue of chastity through her precise and very smart actions in the context of all the games and also the tunes. You can say Matilda showcases this virtue in the games as, let's say there's a level where a structure is obviously housing some pigs and there's a critical weak point that you want to target perfectly to make the whole building collapse. Instead of using brute force like some other birds like Red or let's say Terrence, she can drop a precise bomb on the weak point, causing a chain reaction that will just make the building crumble and killing the pigs. You may be asking, where does this show the virtue of chastity, as it's normally reflected as a purity type virtue? You can see that this reflects on the virtue of chastity as the ability to have pure intention, which we addressed before. And the reason why it can be called this is because she is only targeting what is necessary to do, not overindulging in the bad things like killing a lot of pigs, like a lot of brute force would do, where you need to redwood, do it repeatedly. You can just do it once and get the whole thing over and done with a simple action. Sloth, reluctance to work or to make any efforts, also known as just plain laziness. And none embodies this more than Terrence. Terrence gotta be one of the most clear examples of sloth seen in the franchise, and Sin characterized by laziness and refusal to act. But despite his great potential and abilities being a lot bigger than the rest of the birds and insanely quick with the way that guy was teleporting around, he prefers to remain inactive in the back, not spoken character. You don't really see him, you don't really hear of him, and choosing comfort over effort. His slothfulness prevents him from contributing to a greater good, and he often misses opportunities for further growth and also just achievements to put underneath his name. His inaction becomes a heavy burden, showing how a sloth can lead to a wasted life where potential is skewered and meaningful achievements are fewer. Diligence, devoted and painstaking work, and none better represents this virtue more than Chuck, the yellow bird in the flock. With his known incredible speed represents diligence to his relentless approach to overcome any obstacle that comes in his way, and he will redo it as many times as it takes for him to do it. Diligence is about hard work and persistence, and Chuck perfectly showcased this with his unique ability to be incredibly fast. In the games, he can use his speed boost to go through any obstacles in his way. In the movies, we see this best, and also in the tunes we see this best, where he uses his speed to be where he could just quickly, if he is trying to make a jump in the game or in the show or in the movie, he can just, if he fails to jump, quickly go back and keep trying it until he gets it done. That is exactly what the virtue of diligence and persistence means in this context. Greed, intense and selfish desire for something, and none embodies this more perfectly than Zeta. It has relentless pursuit for more, whether it's power, wealth, or just control exemplifies greed. She is never, no matter what the consequences or the motion is, she's never satisfied, always seeking to acquire more and more and more, ultimately leading to her demise, even if it means harming others in the process, not caring for anyone else's feelings or anybody else's benefit. For instance, Zeta might launch an attack on another island not because she needs more resources, but simply because she wants to expand her dominance. Her insatiable desire drives her to make ruthless decisions, such as betraying her allies and or exploiting weaker and less smarter birds than her, often at the cost of her morals and relationships. Zeta's greed blinds her to seek the values of what she already has, leading to her life becoming eventually dissatisfied and lonely because she's snaked everybody in her life. Pursuit of excess ultimately leads to her downfall in the end, as very things that she wants eventually slip away, and due to her inability to appreciate them, always seeking something else, highlights the destructive nature of being a greedy person. Humility. Humility is the quality of having modest or low view on one's importance. The bird that I have chosen for this virtue is actually Bubbles. The reason why Bubbles suits humility the best out of all the birds in the flock is because Bubbles' unique ability to inflate to a massive size and then deflate back to his original form. A lot of you are saying that that's not what a humility is. That's because his ability doesn't make him who he is. Humility is about recognizing one's limits and not seeking undue attention from it, let's say. Bubbles never seeks praise or modesty from any of the moments of triumph that the flocks have, like getting their eggs back, obviously. But Bubbles' ability to cause great destruction and then shrink back to his small size is an unassuming size mirror for the humble nature of the virtue of humility. Envy, to feel resentful and or unhappy. None embodies this perfectly as Stella. There's too many instances where Stella is constantly comparing herself to others, leading to feelings of resentment and want. Say, when another bird in the flock is praised for their achievements, Stella immediately feels envious or just doesn't want to celebrate their success. Even when she achieves something remarkable, she can't help but focus on what others have that she doesn't, whether it's recognition, abilities, or just relationships. This envy drives a wedge between her and those around her as she becomes increasingly and increasingly better and more competitive as time goes on. For instance, when a friend receives an award, Stella's initial reaction is not to celebrate but wonder why she wasn't chosen for that reward. Her ability to appreciate her own achievement leaves her dissatisfied even when she outshines others in different areas. This causes tension and just mistrust between her and the relationships around her. But also, not only doing that, she erodes her own personal self-worth, demonstrating how envy can consume a person from within, leaving them bitter and unfulfilled. Next, and one of the most popular known virtues of kindness, is the quality of being friendly, generous, and also considerate to those around. She is known for being quite envious for those birds around her, but she perfectly represents the virtue of kindness for her unique bubble blowing ability, which literally symbolizes kindness due to this gentle and non-destructive approach that bubbles have on the world. Really, it's a symbol for peace and harmony. Well, in the real world, bubbles can actually symbolize a good few things depending on the context, but generally it symbolizes the interconnectedness of all living things in the world. Pride, a feeling of deep desire or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. None embodies this more perfectly than Joe. While Joe's overbearing pride is evident in her actions and also her attributes, she sees herself as a superior to others, leading her to make decisions without considering the impact on those around her. During crucial missions, Joe dismisses the strategy proposed by her team, convinced that her plan in her head is the only viable option. Her excess self-confidence makes her dismissive of advice from third-party people. Next virtue we have up next is patience, which is the ability to endure or enable delays in time. So the bird that perfectly represents this is actually Terrence. Terrence, being one of the largest birds and also one of the most powerful birds known in the franchise, he just represents patience because of his slow but very, very devastating attacks. And patience involves the ability to endure hardships, obviously. But you have to wait for the right moment for these things to happen, for the right challenges and the right resolutions for those challenges to show. And wow, can Terrence stand and move not a single muscle. That is patience at its finest. That might be all I need to say, but it's not all that needs to be said. You can see throughout the movies and also the tunes where we get a best evaluation of Terrence's personality that he is very quiet, but wow, can he move fast, and does he have some dark aspects to him that we see, especially in the movies where we see Terrence go to, let's call it the anger management class, because Red went there over his violent outbursts in the movie, that he sees that he can endure a lot of hardships which a lot of the other birds just couldn't handle, and he just had the patience to sit down and get it done. If you got this far into the video, I would highly appreciate it if you just subscribed, and it means it's such a simple thing to click a button, but it means so much. And if you got this far, I would really appreciate it.